What if I told you there's one simple trick that instantly shows the best spots on your lake after just a couple bites? Today I'm going to show you how to unlock your whole lake in minutes, whether you've got a $100,000 bass boat or just an iPhone. To me, this is the biggest game changer in bass fishing in my lifetime, and that's not hyperbole. This has totally changed how we find fish, and the neat thing about it, it's really low tech, and it's super affordable. You can do it with your iPhone and Android. A lot of electronics and stuff have it too, but this is accessible to everybody. So for about 20 bucks, you can totally break down a lake in just a few minutes. And once you actually get a couple bites, going from having a nice spot where you have a nice day and catch a few to figuring out where all the best spots are on the entire lake. It's a total game changer. Let me get into it. So we've always had topo maps for our lakes, and they've gotten more detailed over the years, but they're hard to read. A lot of people really struggle with these. When you look at it, there's all these lines here. It's hard to make anything of it. And trying to figure out where to fish, you can see some general islands and humps and points, but it's hard to really figure it out. Well, the game has changed recently, and that's with a little feature called depth shading. And you go from just a basic map like this to a color-coded one that makes a big difference. And then when you, like in my boat, when you really dial this thing in, it instantly, to my eyes, I can see instantly where the hot spots are. As soon as I find them in one spot and I catch a couple fish there, or I see where the grass is growing on a lake, or the preferred depth zone, I can quickly scan around and rule out about 95% of the water and see the 5% of spots that are holding fish. Now, it's really simple. I'm going to walk you through on screen here exactly how to do it. And then at the end, if you don't know how to do this on your apps or on your boat electronics, I'll walk you through how to do it as well. Literally show you the buttons to hit. It's very simple. I'm going to walk you through two of them. One is on my electronics, my Garmin electronics. The other is on a Navionics app that I use on my phone. There's lots of other apps as well. It works on all the electronics, pretty much have it now, but these are the ones that I use. So let's look at the maps that I actually look at. I'll put up that original map. That's just a blank one, what most paper maps or digital maps look like. This is on Sam Rayburn, an area that has a lot of structure. Historically, grass used to grow there, used to be a really good spot, but it's a really interesting spot to look at. You look at here, you can see just a lot of contours, but it's hard to make them out. The next one, that's my Navionics phone app. You can see that where I have the depth shading on there. And then this is the same piece of structure, the same part of the lake on my Garmin maps. So what we're looking at on my Garmin here, the dark blue is going to be very shallow. That's like 0 to 3 feet. The green is a little bit deeper. That's like 3 to 6 feet. And then the red is 6 to 9. And this is what I'm looking at most of the time when I'm in shallow water. So I can see really easily here, this dark blue, those are the super shallow humps. If I'm running my boat, if I'm driving around, like these couple of islands right here, these high spots that I'm going around, circling, those are ones I can quickly see when I'm running down the lake. Hey, dummy, don't run those over. But a lot of times those will be, high spots, shell beds, rock bars, something like that where the fish are at. And then the green and the red, what I'm looking for in the shallows a lot of times, that's either staging areas or what those happen to be is where I figure out, say like somewhere on Sam Rayburn where the grass is. So I know it's going out to about 6 feet, 7 feet or something. I correlate that. When I have it every 3 feet, I figure out that the grass grows out. It's pretty much where I see green or pretty much where I see red. And sometimes the grass will grow really thick, sometimes it's really thin, sometimes a narrow band. So it's like it's only a couple feet wide. It grows on a lake, say, from about 7 to 9 feet. Well, then I know where the red's at. That's where the grass is going to be. Sometimes it's really thick. It'll grow all the way out to, say, 8 feet, from 1 foot out to 8. So then the blue, the green, and the red, I know that's all going to be grass covered. So here's what I do with it. Typically, when I figure out where the grass is, I'm looking for structural features. So let's say in this case that the grass, anywhere that I see green on my graph out to about 6 feet, that's where grass is. And I'm talking about hydrilla or milfoil, coontail, something like that. So as soon as I know that the grass grows out kind of where the green is, I'm going to look for all the humps and the points and the high spots and stuff. That's the high percentage stuff. So let's say this is like the spring. It's right, the water, it's March in Texas. They're about to spawn. The water temperature is 55, 60 degrees. I'm throwing bladed jigs. I'm throwing square bill crankbaits and jerkbaits, all that stuff. Like this point right here, this is kind of an island, underwater hump or island here. This corner right here that I'm circling right now, that's going to be a point that I'm going to go check, and I'm going to go throw my bladed jig on. Again, the other side of it here, same thing. I tell you what, I'll start circling these. So yeah, so this point right here, the end of the hump, this spot right here, I'm going to check that. Again, there's another kind of point over here. See this little green dot right here? There's an isolated high spot. Definitely check that. The end of this right here, another good spot. I see a neat little point right here. Look at this one. This green makes a point. There's probably going to be a really tight grass point here. I'm going to go right along the edge of this green spot here, and you see the deeper water, the red and the gold kind of comes in, that mustard. That's going to be good. And then the other side of it here, like right here, I'm going to take my bait. I'm going to work around this spot, probably the tip of this, and probably the tip of that right there. Any of those type areas where there's just structural irregularities. Main lake going over to the left, you get this main lake point right here. Here's a nice little grass point right here. I'll hit the tip of that. Here's another sweet spot right there. On this side, I'm looking, I don't really see much kind of coming in. There's no point on this side, but working farther out to the left, here's a nice little grass point in the green. I'm going to hit that. And then going off to the right on the far side, coming out, there's not much of a point right here, but once I work my way down, look at this like hump right here, this isolated green spot. Guaranteed that's an isolated clump of grass out there where it makes a corner right here by the creek channel. You see this right here, this purple, kind of orange, pink, blue and stuff. That's deep water coming in. So they're going to be there. Here's another high spot, perfect grass spot. Another little kind of series of high spots over here. I'll hit the tip of all these with 4 or 5 casts, and then again it looks like there's another island over here. So bingo, those are the high spots. And I've kind of looked at, I've got about 5% of the water located where all these hot spots are going to be at. Now let's say the fish are actually, they're not in the grass, but they're spawning. It's gotten a little warmer. It's about 65 degrees, maybe in March, April now, late March, early April. They're not in the grass, but I see the blue area where that's like 0 to 3 feet, just inside that green, that's where they're spawning. Well, instead of looking for those outside areas on the outside of the grass, I'm looking on the inside. So anywhere I see these little isolated blue spots next to that grass, well, I bet they're probably spawning around these areas. Look at how these blue spots, these little high spots, stand out so clearly. So I'm running around circling these out like somewhere big like this. I'll fish just along the edge. They probably won't be on top. They'll be close to the edge of that grass. So I'll kind of make a ring around the edge. And then these little high spots over here, those are more hidden little spawning spots that, look at this tiny one up here. Those are perfect spawning areas in the grass that normally have to fish across it. Those jump out really clearly to me. And then these hot spots, obviously they change. If that grass is growing deeper, say it's 6 to 9 foot, so it's the red. So I'm looking for the red. So instead of those little green spots, where I fish totally changes. So like this corner over here, all of a sudden that becomes a hot spot. This corner over here, I'm going to hit that. I'm probably going to hit this little point right here. Another lead-in little secondary point here. Look at this piece of structure. There's a little ditch that comes in. That little knob right there, that little point, that looks pretty good. There's a couple deep spots here that might have a little deeper grass next to the bank. Those are worth checking out. Isolated high spot. Man, guaranteed fish holding spot right there. It's probably going to be an isolated clump of grass off a ditch leading into a spawning bay. That's gold. When I come around to the right, this is pretty smooth right here, so I'm not seeing much, but I get to the point right here. I'm going to skip basically from here, this circle, over this circle. They could be along the edge. I might catch scattered ones, but the high percentage play is going to be this next point here, this point up here, maybe this point like right here, and maybe these, here's a little neat structural element here. Looks like a, road bed coming in, so kind of an old bridge or something maybe. Those are all just jump out. And then look at the very bottom of the screen here. Look, here's 2 more isolated grass points right here. If one of those or both of them have grass on them, these very farthest outside ones, those are going to be gold mines. Early and late in the season when you have cold fronts and stuff, that's where they're going to drop to. And then places like this, look at where the red gets really, where it quickly drops to deeper water. I'm going to circle this area. That's a really fast drop. When there's a cold front, they're probably going to group up there. When they're more active, they'll be in a lot of these points. But that real quick drop right there, where I see that the other shades coming in really fast there, this area right here that I'm kind of going around now, that's that quickest drop off. I would be willing to bet when there's a cold front, they're going to load up right there on that really quick drop. Now let's take it to the phone app, and this is the Navionics on the phone, same structural element. So this is what we're looking at, this big kind of hump and flat out in the main lake there. You can see that here. Now the Navionics, I only have 5 different colors that I can use, but again, I've set them up for every 3 feet, and you can see the high spots. It's blue over here. I use different colors, but these high spots, you know, they show up right here, these real shallow spots. Red is shallow on this, and then it goes out to orange, green, purple, and then darker red, kind of that pinkish out there. So you can see these high spots. Again, I'm going to turn this sideways so you can see a little bit better. But again, the same structural features here, like when I see this point right here, this high spot out here, same thing, this underwater island and high spot, basically all the same structural features that I could see on my Garmin map on my electronics, you can see right on your phone. And the subscription, I want to say, on that Navionics, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's $29 a year, $19.99. I'll have to double check and put that in the comments below, but it's not that much. Put it on your iPhone or your Android. Works really easily for maps all around the country. You can download them at home when you want the more detailed ones. Really user-friendly, really easy. And then moving to another section of the lake here, you can see this one has more islands. This kind of tan or yellowish here, those are little high spots out there. You can see the high spots. You can see all the structural elements. Again, it pops to me really quickly. If I'm looking for the green, I'm going to look for like an underwater high spot here, this isolated little point. Most people are going to go fish right here. They're probably going to fish where I'm marking right here, because that looks like on shore, that looks like the point. To the right, though, that's the underwater point there that they're going to miss. That's where I'm going to fish. Same thing off the tip of the island. This looks good. Again, the point where a lot of people are going to fish would be like right around here, because that's where the point is. When I look at the green, the underwater, the hidden spot is like right here. And look at this grass clump right here, this isolated one. Those are 2 underwater ones that most people aren't going to be fishing. They'll fish those islands. They'll fish the natural looking points. But the best ones are underwater, and that green pops out really easily. And then if the red is the key, well then, you know, if it's more 6 to 9 feet, again, it's going to be a little bit different stuff, but it's the same sort of deal. I'm looking for the structural elements, so the tips of the points, where the fastest drops are, you know, any of this, the tip of the point here, looking for anywhere where I think they might go in the cold front. You get drop-offs on the red. I don't see that real steep bank that they're going to drop off on real quick, but the tip of it over here drops to water, deep water, pretty fast. So there's a quick escape route over there, cold front side. And then some of these isolated little points and stuff look like perfect kind of deep weed irregularities where they like to get. So I'll circle a couple of those. And then one more spot here you can look at, another island, really complex structure. If I go over to the Navionics view, you see that island up here. That's this island right here that's similar to the one that I have right here. This is the Garmin map. This is Navionics, but you can see how like this ditch right here really comes into play, where I can see that one, you know, right here. It shows up really clearly. And then I see all these really cool structural elements out here. Again, I got these blue high spots that are probably spawning spots. I have humps out there in the green and points that I'm going to fish, all the high percentage areas. Those, you know, all these green corners, the blues again, and then the red. I can see some of these more points that run out a little bit deeper, and like, again, here's the red on a point and a real steep slope on the side. Here's my cold front spot right here. And then these more green and blue, those are the type things I'm looking for when it's a warming trend. That's going to be the points where they're more active on. Now that's shallow water fishing, and that works really well, especially when you have grass or you find structural features where they're spawning on flats, say like 5 feet deep, or they're staging on rocky points and stuff in about 8 feet. It helps you see that structure. Now out deep, I really have done well with this, and it was always a hack, and I did traditionally well on places like Kentucky Lake and Chickamauga, these deep water fisheries that fish a lot to me like Lake Fork, and I learned this over the years while guiding, is the fact that in most of the lake, in the bottom third, or say the middle third, or the northern third of the lake, once you figured out how deep the shad were and the bass were kind of positioning around them, it was going to hold true in that general area of the lake. So if I went to one spot, say in the bottom third of the lake, and I found that bass were set up in about 25 feet of water on a point there, I could guess that other points that were about 25 feet deep around there were probably going to be money. The ones that were 30 feet, 20 feet, stuff like that, probably weren't going to have fish on them. So that was a huge shortcut. And what I looked for were points that had like a lot of surface at, say, that 25-foot range. So what I mean is, if something tops out, a hump or a point tops out about 25 feet and has a lot of area, right at the end of it where it starts to drop off, that was going to be the key area. Versus if this is 25 feet of water, and a point or hump kind of just runs through that 25. Most of it's up at 18, and a lot of it's down at 30, but it doesn't have much at 25. Whatever that key depth was, you wanted kind of a lot of surface area at that key depth. So let's take it back to the map here. And when I look at the map, again, these are set up in 3-foot contour intervals. And once you get to the yellow, that's starting to be 30 feet and beyond. Like the lime green, that's like 27 to 30. And then you have like 24 to 27. That's going to be that kind of light blue. Then you have the pink. And a lot of times in these offshore lakes, I would get to where I would find that the fish were setting up in like this purple or the kind of orange color. So let's say that's the key. So today I'm out there and I figured out that they're set up on purple. So obviously I know pretty quickly that these areas like this big hump out here, this big high spot, those are going to be places that I want to graph around. So I'll go ahead and circle, like this hump. That's going to take me a while to graph. But like these little micro ones, the micro high spots, like look at this little purple spot, this little purple spot, this little purple spot. Here's a hump that's in that purple zone with a little side hump on it, like this little one right here, could be on the tip of it out here. That really interests me. Instead of graphing, like people mowing their grass, they just go through and they just graph and they go up and down and up and down and up. And I mean, they just graph forever. You could throw a crankbait, cover all this stuff. It's going to take forever. What I did there was basically circle those key areas and you go right to those instead. So let's erase all that clutter there. But again, here's more purple over here. Look at this high spot right here. Tells me to graph that. Here's a quick access to deep water on the tip of this one. The corner of the purple over here. I'm probably not going to go graph all this stuff up here. It gets really big and wide on the purple. Most of this I'm not going to graph. I'm going to go check to see if there's a brush pile or if I see fish on my graph or something, or throw a crankbait on the edges. I'm going to go to just the high percentage areas. And on the very top of the screen here, here's another high spot. So if it's a small spot like this, I'm going to graph that whole thing or fish that whole thing. Carolina rig, worm, crankbait, football jig, all that stuff. I'm going to fish these. If it's a big area like this, I'm probably not going to fish it all. It starts to get, 100 feet, 400 feet, something like that. That's where I like to graph it and see if I can find like an isolated brush pile, a standing tree, a rock pile, something like that. Now let's do the exercise one more time, and let's say that now it's the pink. That's what's residing. That's the area that I caught my first group of fish. Let's say over here on this little run out point, I caught them here. So that tells me, pink's kind of the key depth today. They're getting closer to 30 feet. Look at this little sneaky isolated hump right there. That pink one. Look at this one. Probably this stuff that's up in the creek more. I'm not going to check. This one to me looks better than this high spot here just because they usually like in the summertime or winter, they like to be closer to the main lake. A couple sneaky ones over here. I'm going to check this and this. Like the end of look at this crazy little feature, this kind of dongle out here. The tip of this thing or up the side of it here. They could be anywhere along the side. That drops off pretty fast, but especially on the end of it out here. This through here, I'm going to mark it, but I'm not going to, you could drag a crankbait, but that's kind of boring along here, not a lot happening. But then you come to a corner right here, drops off pretty quickly. That's definitely of interest. Right along through here where I'm highlighting there, that's pretty generic. There's not much there. That doesn't really interest me. This does though. Look at the next one. Here's a point that runs out there. That's definitely interesting. The corner right here, there's not much pink, so that's probably not as good. Maybe they're going to be out here. See where this is a road bed right here that runs down it. I'm going to check that or throw a crankbait. Once I keep working to the right though, like this high spot, this hump out here that's in pink, that looks good. Like the shallower side that I circled now, that's probably not as interesting unless there's a brush pile. But this end out here looks really good. Like this pink spot right here, isolated pink, that really looks like money. These two that are way out here, the farthest out in the main lake, pink ones, man, this is double money right here. That looks really good. And then this over here, you know, it's worth graphing around, but it's a little bit bigger. I'm probably going to graph this whole thing and hope on like one end, the top end, or the like up here on the top, or down on the bottom, like one of those sides. Hopefully there's gonna be a collection there, because it's too big to just sit there and drag a worm across the whole thing. And then at the top of the screen here, you see here's another little structural element where that pink comes out and then it turns to white right there. It gets really deep in a hurry. So this area right here is probably of interest as well, because it drops off really fast, where this one right here is just kind of a big high spot. They could be along there, especially if there's a brush pile. But where this is, it has the pink, a lot of surface area, and then drops off really fast. That's of more interest to me. So that's it. That's the shortcut right there. Pretty low tech. It's using mapping. We used to have paper maps, but a lot of them were only 10-foot contours. You couldn't see stuff. Now we have these 3-foot intervals that I highlight. A lot of the maps have 1-foot intervals. All these little subtle places offshore, you can run right to them, and you can graph them, or you can just fish them. You know, you don't have to necessarily graph them. Like I'm talking about in deeper water, that helps if you're trying to eliminate big areas. But if it's grass or it's shallow and it's points, I'm just cranking these. I'm throwing a bladed jig or something across it. And like I said, you eliminate like 95% of the water. They're not going to be on every one of these, but once you know they're kind of on the tips of the points, if it's cold water, you know, cooling water after a front, they're on the quick drop-offs and stuff, you're going to be able to eliminate and say, here's the 10 best areas that are around me, and I'm willing to bet that at least 1 or 2 of them have fish, and if it's a good bite and they're active, maybe about 7 or 8 out of those 10 have them. So it goes from just finding a few fish to all of a sudden really catching them and calling your shot. So here's how to put it on your graph. This is for a Garmin EchoMap Ultra. Every graph's going to be a little bit different, but go to the menu on the side and then go to Layers, look for Water, and it's called Depth Shading. You have to make sure it's turned on, the green light, and then you see all the different ranges. You can do 10 different ones. You click on them, you can select the color, the minimum depth, and then the maximum depth. And then when it's turned on and you zoom in, you see that it pops up. Now the Navionics app, this is actually on my iPhone. You open the app, you go to your map, and you see at the bottom right there, it says menu. You'll want to go ahead and click on the menu, and then you'll scroll to map options. And this is going to bring up a pretty elaborate menu. You can do all sorts of things with it, but the main thing you want to get to, it's called fishing ranges on this, and you can see the colors. You can do up to 5 colors. You adjust them. If you click on one of them, I've already saved them. You have to build them, but you just adjust them to whatever depth that you want, and then pick the color. And if this tip was helpful, I started a podcast with some of the top pros in bass fishing. Check them out. Top pros talk about one technique, go really deep, help you find more fish, catch more fish.